Hi, in this video I'm going to talk about the general configuration of the diagram elements. Now, this is the screen that we had from the last video where we've got a whole bunch of elements put down here. Now, to configure elements you have to be in edit mode, so this edit button has to be in the down position, and when we move across we get this big arrow which is the editing cursor. We've already looked at how we edit the wire positioner. Really the only things we can do with this thing, and as far as configurations is concerned, is change the direction the thing points in, up, right, down or left. So it can only point in the four directions. All the other elements though we can actually do a whole lot more configuration, so let's have a look at the discrete device. Okay, so if we press the configuration button on this one, you can see that a new dialog comes up. Now, some of these dialog elements are common to all the configuration, and that's the ones that I'm going to be talking about at the moment. The first one is that we have a field for a description. This is really only for your use. PySim doesn't use a description at all, so you can use anything you want, my first controller or something like that. Okay, so it's really just to remind you what that particular controller does, or that particular device does. The next one is the type of the variable that is being used. Now, for things like the this thing here, the discrete element, the type of the variable that's being used is really the measurement variable that is going into it. So in this case, you can have temperature, pressure, flow, level, or other, which indicates an X. The device type in the discrete device thing, we're offered the choice of using an indicator, a recorder, a controller, indicator, recorder, indicator, controller, recorder, controller, or all three. Now, all of these devices can also have alarms added to them as well. You also have the opportunity to change the tag number of the device. Again, this is really just for your own use, but I would recommend that you use it, otherwise things get really confusing. So let's say we wanted to set this thing up as a concentration indicator. So that will be concentration X indicator, and we might want to have a 001 as our tag number. Okay, so that would be that thing set up. You can see the instrument tag name is now XI001. Again, it's numbered according to the ANSI specification. We've got underneath on this thing ranges for input and output signals. Obviously on an indicator there isn't actually an output, but for the input signal, if we click units, you can see that we automatically have concentration, the PySim concentration units in here. If we change that to let's say a temperature indicator, the thing that would appear in here would be the temperature units. The minimum and maximum values that go in here are the range of the instrument that is being attached to the input. So if we were attaching this thing, which is presumably a concentration measuring device, if we were attaching this thing to the controller, we would have to look at the specification of this instrument and make sure that the input range going into this device matched that specification coming out here in engineering units. Really in PySim this is determined by the simulation author, and they should give you information about what the ranges are, the output ranges of all the instruments that are attached to the simulation. Okay, so that's ranges. The other important thing is this port configuration. The port configuration determines where the input and output ports are on this particular element. So let's say we wanted to put an input port in the bottom here. We would click on here and we would say we wanted the measurement signal to go into that port. Now you can only, with a discrete device, you can only take one input signal, well, one measurement signal and one set point signal, so there could be two input signals. But for an indicator there will only be one input signal. It's the measurement that you actually want to indicate on the display. Other signals, obviously we could have the set point signal or the output signal. We'd have to specify those if we were going to use them. Okay, so that's the general configuration for the discrete device. Let's have a look at the other devices. So let's look at the static function configuration. So again, what we've got is the description. Okay, so that once again, is for your own use. PySim doesn't even look at it. In the function element, what I've done is determine the device type by the output signal. The reason for this is that obviously in a function you could actually have mixed units in the input signals. So for example, you could be using a function to calculate, I don't know, heat transfer coefficient. So your input signals could involve flow rates and temperatures, things like that, to back calculate the heat transfer coefficient at the output. So really the output type determines the first letter in the tag name. And the device type for the function configuration is a whole bunch of different types of function we can have. We'll talk about those when we actually talk about specifically configuring the function. Again, instrument tag name, it's important. It's not used by PySim, but it's important for clarity that you actually use different tag numbers rather, for different instruments. The port configuration is exactly the same as the discrete device configuration. The difference is that function elements can have multiple inputs. So you can see in this case it's set up as a sum, and the device function is output is equal to constant A times input 1 plus constant B times input 2 plus constant C times input 3. So this thing can actually have 3 inputs. You can get away with just specifying one input, but you can use a maximum of 3 inputs, so we could have the output on that side, for example. As you specify inputs and outputs in the function block, automatically generates the maximum and minimum ranges on the left hand side here. So this is input signal 1. We can specify what type of signal that's going to be, temperature, pressure, flow, level or other, and we can specify the units that that signal is going to be in. And for the output signal, we've already told the PySim that it's going to be a temperature signal, so it's temperature units that are set up there. Okay, so that's general configuration in this one, and let's have a look at dynamic function. Oops. So the general configuration, again, description, the output type, just as we had for the static function, device type. For this thing, we've got integral, time delay or lead lag. We have an instrument tag number, again, the same thing as before. We can have multiple inputs, again up to 3 inputs on the dynamic function as well, and a single output. So we can set any of our ports, any of those 4 ports, to be an input 1, input 2 or input 3, or we can set it to be the output port as well. Okay, the next videos I'll be looking at the individual diagram elements and how you configure the different functions in those. Thanks for listening. Bye.